In looking at precedent images, I found a really cool example that was really straightforward, and I thought it did a really good job of communicating this one key statistic here, which is age at first marriage in 1999 and 2020. Now, they use a very simple color palette, and they also have people and also their clothing that they would wear in that period, which really humanizes this data. To make this graphic possible, though, we need the data to support this. And locating and finding data can be very challenging and a whole discipline within itself. But for the purposes of just really finding and discovering what's relevant to you, I'm going to point you to some helpful resources and ways that you can think through finding the data that would be relevant for your project. Now, in some cases, you are discovering statistics or data that you come across that you find surprising and you want to communicate that. In other cases, you may already know what the subject is or what you're looking for, or have anecdotal evidence for something to be true, and then you're looking for that data to support your ideas. Either way, we want evidence to support our claims. So we're going to dive into some resources that we can take a look at and go from there. We are going to be covering different types of data sets. We'll start with some general data searches and some bigger, more complex data, and then go to some organizations that have reports that might reference these data sets, and that can also be a location to find the relevant data for your project. The last category we'll look at is just looking at research papers as well as a source to both build your knowledge around a subject and find particular data points or information on that particular topic. Okay, so we'll start with Google data search and we'll look for sustainability, and we are doing rating systems. One of the items to look for is going to be the different file formats. So typically you want to look for something that has a CSV. And here you can also change the format to tabular to make sure that you can find a source that has a CSV format. What I do like about data search here is that it will bring up other items like a document. So you may come across other sources that would be helpful for your project. The next resources that you can take a look at are data.gov, and this has a lot of information here, as well as reports that you can reference, and a lot of really helpful data sets that you can just start to look through, as well as the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. Sometimes the best data source is the data that your city or state provides. So this will really vary depending on where you live and how they maintain that data, but overall this can be a really useful way to find the relevant information that you need. So here we're on the Atlanta Data Open Data Hub under GIS, Geographic Information Systems, and you can search data and also look at different categories that they have. So when I hit, let's go back to the download, you'll notice that there'll be a series of different formats that we can reference and download. So once you have that data, what do you actually do with it? There are a lot of programs that can process this data. For the purposes of this project, we're going to be looking at mapping as well as turning this into graphs and charts. So for the mapping, you can use whatever software or GIS software that you're already familiar with. If you're not, I definitely recommend the ArcGIS. It's very easy to use, and there is a free version, and I'll share the link because it's actually kind of hard to find the free version, but you can basically still bring in your data sets, and you can also search existing data as well. It might be a little bit more limited in some of its functions. However, it does allow you to do a lot of edits in terms of the actual visuals and graphics that you use, which is something that I do appreciate. Okay, so if you are using ArcGIS, this basically works in layers. So I have layers of different data sets, and for each one of those data sets, I can then come in and I can edit the graphics for each one of these. So I can change the transparency, I can change the colors. There's a lot of different things that I can do. I can even choose different style options, and really when you get into it, you can make a lot of different customizations. I'm sure you could increase these more or less, make these areas of influence larger. And you can see just playing around with this, it's pretty fun and you can really explore and yeah, have fun with it. Okay, let's take a look at how to add data to your map. So I'll go to this plus arrow and I can either add a layer from a file that I've downloaded. I'm actually going to hit browse layers and I can hit this my contents and I can come down to ArcGIS online. And here I can just start searching different data sets. Again, this might be a limited amount of information here that I have available. This is a free version, but I can just sift through these and see if there's anything interesting, like Atlanta income and diversity. Might look like an interesting thing to take a look at. I can then, once I've added that layer, I can go to layers. And again, I can click on this and I can come and edit it. I can even change different transparency levels. So again, there's just a lot of customization, and even just with one data set, you can really get into the weeds in terms of customizing the graphics. And I highly recommend just going through that exercise and not just getting the first thing that pops up, but really working with the data set you have and going back to that idea of how do I best communicate this information that I'm trying to present. The next thing we're going to jump over to is raw graphs. And I discovered this recently, and at first I thought it was really cool and had a lot of different options. I did realize after using it that Google Sheets can almost do all of the same things, but it is a more intuitive interface to work through some of the data sets, and you can kind of customize it a little bit easier. So we'll just quickly go over this, and then we can also go over to Google Sheets and start seeing how we can make some simple graphs using Google Sheets. So this is the home page here, and I can go to upload data, I can browse, and I'll find whatever CSV file that I have, start to look through it and try to understand what the different fields actually mean is a good first step. And then taking a look at the different types of charts that you could use and see which one could be most applicable. Let's try circle packing. Okay, and then based on whatever you chose, you can then start to drag those fields up. So for this, I'd like to come back up to here and just look through the different categories, try to get a sense for what the data here is. Then I'll come back here and I'll look at the different categories. So we have a label. So I think I want the neighborhood there. Now let's delete per capita. Okay, so now I can look back and verify if this is true, but my sense is that the per capita numbers are higher in these specific neighborhoods, but I definitely would want to verify that. Okay, then we'll go over Google Sheets. So if I go File, Import, I can import a CSV. And I'll just go over this really quickly. But again, this is a really great tool for creating graphs. So for instance, I can just come here and I can select the items I have, and we can go to this insert chart. Once you have this insert chart, you can come to different types of data sets that you can use. So you can kind of break this out however you want. And then you'll notice as well the different categories that you can break this up in. So you have the label. And again, we can go back and customize this chart style as well. Another helpful thing is you can kind of click on the items and then it will bring that view up. And that's just a helpful way that you could just quickly customize something without kind of for a long time going through and trying to find that type of where that information is stored. So for instance, if I wanted to change the text title, I could just come here and change it there. So yeah, creating these graphs in either an online tool or using something like Google Sheets is a really good way just to get those high level numbers. And then you can take that and sort of transform it into your eventual graphic. Okay, the next category of data that you can look at is your local organizations, or an organization or institute that is connected to your project. So for instance, if I were to do a project in architecture and labor, I might look at the AIA Architectural Billings Index. So the AIA is the American Institute of Architects. It's a professional organization for architects. So just taking a quick look at reports that your local organizations have done is a really good way just to find that key data information. And within these some of these reports, there can be a lot of really fascinating information, and especially if you're not sure what you want your project to be, this could be a really good way to actually go about looking at the data first and kind of discovering, wow, this is actually really shocking. And I want to kind of expose this and take a look at this and understand this in more detail by actually looking at the data first. The AIA also has additional types of reports. They have a sustainability report, a technology report. So they do these different publications, and there's a lot of organizations out there that do those, and then you can reference and see what data they're using and then use those key metrics that you have discovered. Okay, I know we went through those tools really quickly, but I just wanted to give a high-level overview of what's there. And then if you have specific questions on how to use those tools, happy to walk through those tools in more detail. And also just let me know if you have any questions. And there's always looking at tutorials online. But I just wanted to start with those initial tools.